We all know 2020 has been a rough one for many reasons, but as ever, video games have been there to get us through. Perhaps you're finding yourself looking for something a little different to help you recover from the emotional ordeal of The Last of Us Part 2, or maybe you just want something a little older so that you can get it a little cheaper than a brand new title. Fortunately for you, Dragon Age may hold that answer. When I started Dragon Age Inquisition last year, which is written about on the website as well, I put in around 30 hours and then promptly got distracted by another game, as I so often do. But even my bad habits didn't stop me from coming back around to finish it at the start of June last year. I figured I'd just put in another 10 or 20 hours over a week or two and finish it off, but I ended up falling in love with the game all over again and getting another 80 hours of gameplay out of the same character I started the year prior. Needless to say, I had a great time. It's been a long while since I found myself itching to get back to a game I'd been playing. For the first time in what felt like years, I was waking up in the morning and thinking about playing more Dragon Age. It was that childlike feeling of never wanting to stop playing even when your parents told you to. The same feeling of joy that made me feel love for games in the first place. But I can sit here and tell you how much I loved it all day, but that's not what most of you are here for. You want to know how Dragon Age Inquisition holds up in 2020 and beyond, and if it's worth your consideration. So, let's get started on a slightly more objective look at how things shape up in the most recent Dragon Age title. We'll start simple, the graphics. Being over 6 years old, you'd be forgiven for expecting Inquisition to look a little rough around the edges. But in all honesty, BioWare could have released the game last year and I probably wouldn't have questioned them. The odd texture on a rock here and there wasn't perfect, but you have to expect little things like that in such a massive game. Other parts of the game, such as how the lighting interacts with the ice on the ground and frozen areas of the map, and how metallic weapons gleam in the sun, are downright beautiful. I think BioWare might have turned down the shininess at some point since the release of Inquisition. I remember the gleam of weapons and armor being a tad excessive back when I saw the game in 2014, but regardless of how things used to look, there is no denying that the game is still visually stunning. As for the animation, I'd say 90% of the time it is faultless. The other 10% of the time is when you remember that Dragon Age is a BioWare game, and player characters being in the wrong spot or not being able to interact with other characters as smoothly as they should. Of course, none of this is game breaking or even really immersion breaking, it just makes some interactions look a little awkward, but at the end of the day, it's a BioWare game for you. It rarely has perfect animation, but it's always good enough for you to not care. And anyway, who's playing BioWare games for the graphics or the animations, honestly? It's the trademark storytelling that we're all here for. On the topic of the storytelling, Dragon Age Inquisition is arguably the greatest achievement of the BioWare writing team to date. Mass Effect 3 is close, but is let down by its ending, while Mass Effect 2 doesn't quite have the same polish that Inquisition does. As for how it compares to the more recent efforts in Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem, well, it's no contest. Inquisition just has a way of drawing you into its world. Sure, this is aided by having 2 previous games in the series to build that investment, but that also raises the stakes. Like we saw in Andromeda, when you mess up a game that's part of an existing series, people will tell you whether you want them to or not. The best thing about the writing in Inquisition is not necessarily that every piece of dialogue has been meticulously crafted to perfection. There are lines in the game that fall short of this, and that's no exception. But the way the story gets told so beautifully makes up for that. It doesn't matter whether you make the right choices or not. You can do a terrible job running your Inquisition or be the perfect leader, and that story will be told well. Characters might leave your party or become your best friend, and both routes will feel equally impactful and emotional. It's rare to find a game that doesn't noticeably apply the polish to the developer's preferred route compared to the other options. Inquisition is a gem in that regard, with every other choice having an equally rewarding result, even when the impact on the gameplay isn't actually equal. And decisions. It wouldn't be a BioWare game without decisions. Once again, they did a great job with them, more so on this occasion than any other I feel. Every decision, big or small, feels like it is referenced at some point, allowing you insight into the impact of every choice you make. Not to mention how characters respond to your choices. Some might earn you a simple X approves or X disapproves, but other choices might come up in conversation later on, be it when you speak with characters at your base of operations or in the more subtle discussions that take place as you traverse the game world. For once, it's a game where your choices feel like they have an impact on the people and the world around you. The only criticism I have of the main story is how abruptly it comes to a halt in the final 2 missions. Sure, you can go and do more quests and explore the world once the main story is completed, but it still feels like everything gets resolved slightly too quickly, with the final cutscene being left to do a lot of the legwork in terms of tying up loose story threads. But if you invest in the Trespasser DLC, or one of the game editions that comes with it, this issue does get resolved by offering you some closure through an additional post-game storyline. Actually, all the DLC for Inquisition is pretty good. Trespasser, The Descent, and the Jaws of Hallahan all match the main game's level of detail and fantastic level design. The Jaws of Hallahan DLC in particular offers a few more hours of gameplay in what I would argue is the best designed area in the entire game, both visually and in regards to the stories it tells. Plus you get to fight another dragon, and who doesn't love a dragon fight? So if you feel an itch for a fantasy RPG, or you just want a game that can easily consume 30 to 100 hours of your life, Dragon Age Inquisition is undoubtedly the way to go if you haven't played it before. And if you have played it before, well, I'm sure there are things you missed in the first time, right? Perhaps a character you didn't romance, a questline you left unfinished. Any one of these things is more than enough reason to jump back into one of BioWare's greatest games to date.